thanks for mentioning my right, Desik, because I then would be doing my boss's job, which is not right. So thank you all. Thank you all for staying on. And those who are leaving, I will wait for them to leave so that the room is quiet. Um, so before we actually get into the whole question and answers and debates, I was telling the esteemed gentleman that I'm going to use a personal story to set up the context in which we're going to be discussing today. And me and my son, he's 9-year-old, we're big fans of Shark Tank. And the recent season 2 of Shark Tank, few of the clients, few of the sharks are known clients and known friends. And so it makes it more enriching for us to have those chit chats. And I feel today my son is 9-year-old ready to do a CAC discussion with all of you, debate around it, because he asks a lot of questions. Uh, Platforms and social content like these have actually made it very simple for us to understand. A common man to understand how an investor thinks and how the business of ROI works and how the commerce business transforms itself. But the reality is we are all in this business. We know it's not that simple, right? I think the earlier panel discussion, I heard the last 15 minutes and last 10 minutes, and very clearly, that's exactly they were talking about, that both this Zepto versus a Tata Click, the business models are very different. The category reference points are very different. The audience reference points are very different. So the customer acquisition cost is something which we can't loosely play around with. And that's a very critical component as an output matrix as well as an input matrix, because it's a vicious circle. It never stops. It never stops, right? You're catching hold at both ends of the tail, right? I mean, you just can't let it go. So in this context, I thought I will add value by not asking too many questions, but asking 2, 3 relevant questions and allow all of them to talk. Right? So the first question that I have for this group is, what are some of the strategies that have been effective from your observation in reducing CAC in a business?
I think that's the thing for most of the D2C brands in India at this point in time. So everyone is running after profitability, and I think CAC plays a very important role in building that up. So I think a couple of strategies, I think, which we as a brand or as a group, we guys have adopted on. I think the main component of this entire bit is the kind of creative communication which is going out in the market. Very specifically, we have to look at what people are expecting from a brand and what you guys are giving. And on top of it, you have to make an assessment whether an X creative or a Y creative is working. Probably, I would say the second one, which is the most important bit, is doing a lot of A/B test. When I say A/B test can be on creatives, A/B test can be on your pages, on your web pages, can be on your retention marketing, can be on your performance marketing across multiple areas. So I think these two are most important aspects which every brand has to cater on. If they are able to deliver the right product or the right communication at that point in time, your conversion rates will improve, which will further enhance your, say, CAC. Another bit I would say, which is another important aspect, is the entire role of retention marketing, which plays on this. How you are communicating to your relevant user very specifically at that point in time, whether your communication is making sense to the user. I think that's the most important play, which I feel. So these are probably the 3 broader things which we follow as a brand, and I hope all other brands are also doing a similar bit.
So thanks, Priti, for the question. So clearly, as Rajat mentioned, these are a couple of instances where a CAC for an organization can be reduced. However, coming from an FMCG company, I would still say, like your son, CAC is still new to us also, because we are a typical FMCG company. Our still 70% of our business comes from the offline channels. It's only 20% is online. So to be honest, in utmost honesty, it's very difficult to attribute the customer acquisition, because a consumer doesn't follow a very linear graph. Today, he might be shopping from Amazon Fresh. Tomorrow, he might be walking to a mall and buying the product from there. So it's very difficult for me to actually get the LTV of the consumer and at the same time attribute the CAC that which channel is performing for me. While having said that, that complexity of the consumer journey and life cycle, I would maybe double click on a couple of points which Rajat said, is that one, which I personally feel that creativity has been kind of a missing its due importance in recent times. We've been trying to focus so much on the CTRs and the CPCs of the world that we underestimate the power of creativity, which I believe is huge potential. A creativity makes a dollar works better for you. So it's not just about optimizing the campaign on terms of the digital metrics, but if you have a good creative, you can also improve the not just the performance metrics, but the customer experience also.
Yeah.
And we have seen multiple examples where people are actually discussing that. Have you seen that advertising? Have you
Yeah.
seen that ad? Have you heard of that brand? Because that word of mouth, it will only happen if you are delivering a great creative to your customer. Second, again, from the FMCG company, for us, CAC is, I would say, almost about retention.
Yeah.
We are competing for the customer pretty much every month. We are into the battlefield every month. It's not
Yes.
like you buy a smartphone once and you're out for
3 years.
2 years or 3 years. For us, it's a monthly game.
Yeah.
I might be acquiring customer today, but again tomorrow there might be 3 more brands who would be offering 30% more discounts
Correct.
and trying to lure the same customer. So for it, it's the retention is the name of the game. So there, honestly, we do not try to go very aggressive in terms of getting a new consumer. For me, my brand ethos, my brand personality, and my brand or my product is extreme importance. So I only believe that if consumer is willing to buy all of these, then I have a tick box that maybe he'll come back to me because I might be able to sell him through, say, maybe a discount or certain other things. I can put a carrot to him and get him once, but it will be very difficult for him to pull it back. He will only come back to me if he buys into the brand, he buys into the product, and buys into the what proposition or the value I stand for. And third, again, very important metrics, again, maybe slightly diverting from that thing, is the product itself. Of late, see, at one point of time, there's a lot of companies, and not trying to name anyone or disrespect even, there's a lot of focus on the marketing and optimizing the media metrics and less focus on the product itself. It's a B2 product with no clear product proposition or differentiation being charged out. So then it's a difficult battle, because then your CAC will always continue to maybe have a rising trend, or you will have to fight for your consumer every month on month. So for me, improving the product, maybe improving my gross margin or the contribution margin, will help me reduce the CAC in a long-term battle. Because after some certain point of time, I want this customer to return back to me organically. Unless if it's a paid thing, then I'm losing the battle in a longer term.
Interesting, interesting. And I have a few questions as follow up to that, but I'll wait for Kushal to share his views.
I think I'm going to take on from, I think, a bit that both of them said as well. But I think, given the theme has been about, omni-channel, and that's the big buzzword for so many years, right? I just think it's extremely difficult for almost any marketer to understand really, in terms of, given the various channels he's selling from, that really where it's finally resulting, right? You don't know finally in terms of where that customer's finally buying from and what he began that journey from, right? So he could have Googled, he could have gone somewhere else, could have researched, done multiple things, and finally, after 1.5 months, bought that TV. So what do you attribute that, holy grail to? And I think perhaps then, if I can sort of step back to what he just said, right? Which means that if I was in a consideration set as a customer to buy, say, a television, you're going to be doing a lot of research, you're going to be doing, reviews and so many other things. But somewhere down the line, if in a world of today where I think there is not much product differentiation, a plasma is a plasma at the end of the day, LED, CD, whatever, all the fancy gizmos and ads and things they do, right? But if someone can bring I think what we're missing, Preeti, is that I think, because we come, a lot of us, from worlds of advertising communication for so many years, is that everything has become very momentary in terms of branding and marketing. There's nothing which you can sort of take a joy. And if I ask the audience right now, what's the one ad they remember in the last 15 years, many will say Cadbury is the real taste of life. But in today's world, everyone can remember one of yesterday, and one of 1 month old, they'll forget. So can I relate the creative cost to, like, par excellence creative? No. Which means it's average creative drawing average media to media everywhere, which is transactionally getting to a certain cost. I don't know if you're getting the drift, but I'm
Yes,
essentially
totally.
saying that, there is just
All of us are nodding for that.
literally sort of, so much very average communication out. Every medium is sort of playing its final role. And then, yes, at the end of the day, it's my 16-year-old who's decided what TV he's bought finally, right? So after all the research mom and dad did, it's left to another person who's finally bought the product.
Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting because it's not just about creative or ad recall. What they might remember is the influencer who kind of used the brand.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the other creative angle today. Right? The influencer is the creative, or vice versa. The creative is influenced by the influencer to a large extent. Interestingly, that's where, which is not in my question sets out of the 10 that I shortlisted. But what popped for me when Mukesh and you and all of you were speaking, and this question specifically, Mukesh, that you said the category-wise story is different, and in an FMCG, CAC is still evolving its articulation and definition. Hence, to me, the question that popped up is CAC a very commerce language? And are we pressurized as marketeers or businessmen to focus too much on it?
I mean, it's a difficult question.
Yeah.
So yes, because maybe I'll answer in two parts. One, I would not say pressurized, but because those jargons are out there into the market, and hence those kind of discussion sets comes into the play. But I still feel a part of your marketing strategy could be very performance oriented, and a couple or a traditional way of marketing can still be there. I think if everyone, if we get submitted to the complete this pressure and completely optimize on the performance, then we might be doing wrong or injustice to our marketing strategy. So hence, traditionally as an FMCG player, a typical brand building, creative communication strategy is equally important for us. However, with the rise of digital and now grocery and FMCG products are very big in the e-commerce player. So the way we structure is that there are a couple of acquisition channels for us where we're trying to optimize or get into the CAC kind of a discussion. But then there are certain like a television or a OTT or maybe a print advertising that are largely used to create impact, used to build the brand in a longer term, and not actually looking for a CAC definition or a LTV definition. While maybe a certain part of it, for example, if I'm selling through Amazon or third-party e-commerce, there maybe I'll try to optimize for those certain terms. So it has to be a healthy mix of both performance as well as brand marketing.
Interesting, interesting. And that also reflects on how the language of CAC differs from industry to industry, right? The other point which you had mentioned was also about the fact that, the retention of customers becomes very important. Give me more texture and elaborate on that, because that's very top of the line view on it. But we all know the customer retention is one of the key strategies for driving better CEs.
Yeah, I think just to add what just Mukesh mentioned, I think nowadays, because say he works for a traditional FMCG brand, I think nowadays, say a couple of VCs or angel investors have become smarter enough. If you go back to the time frame, maybe 2 years back or just before COVID, I think everything was all about top line. And nowadays, everything has changed, wherein consumers, or even for that matter, say all these VCs and founders are expecting what has been the CAC, what has been the LTV. And that adds up to the next question which you just asked. I think customer retention is the most important aspect of the entire marketing bit, which every other company is doing. Say our key thing as a company, what we guys are now looking at is basically an LTV to CAC ratio. I think if we are acquiring an X customer in X month, how that customer is returning, what is the cohort at a 6-month basis or a 12-month basis different product. I think that's the bit which we as a company have been focusing upon. We look at a product level cohort, we look at a channel level cohort as well, so that we are able to identify that, for example, Facebook is one medium wherein I'm acquiring customers at an expensive cost, but on top of it, my CRM comes into the picture or my marketing automation comes into the picture wherein I'm trying to increase the overall LTV. So we do look at the first month acquisition cost, but I think over a period of time, we have evolved to a stage wherein we have now started looking at an LTV and then the CAC bit. So LTV to CAC is something which we have been focusing upon. And I think in the longer run, with say at the end of the day, you can't spend a lot on newer acquisition. Day by day, Facebook, Google's and every other place is getting expensive. And there are numerous brands who are coming every day. I see when I go on Amazon as a skincare or a perfume brand, we typically see a new brand every day on Amazon. So it's getting difficult. So at the end of the day, the idea is to basically build on something which is more sustainable. At our business level also, as we speak now, we have already evolved to a stage where we have a 60-40 ratio. So 60 we spend on newer acquisition and 40 is on customer retention, and that's the entire bit which we as a company have been following. And I think that's the way forward. Over a period of time, I want to attain a certain stage wherein probably we do a 50-50 or a 60-40 in a reverse mode. So that's what it is.
Fair, that's very interesting. And I think from an FMCG also equally important to have a customer retention, right?
Correct, absolutely. As I mentioned, FMCG is all about retention
Yeah.
because we are a small ticket item unit and we are out there to acquire consumer pretty much every month because I'm fighting with a grocery cycle which is in a month-on-month cycle. So what edible oil or whatever food product that's coming into the house, it's all about retention. And if I see that consumer and hence maybe a deep discounting model will not in a longer run work for an FMCG company because that might bring him once, but then if he's coming only for the discount, there would be some other player offering that deep discount maybe next month and trying to lure that customer. So retention is definitely the game for us. However, that also depends on the maybe life cycle of the product that they are in. So for example, if I have a flagship product like Oli, which is a 200 crore brand, there maybe the focus is largely on the retention because I am say X percentage of the category share. I'm trying to optimize for the retention and maybe it's a 80-20 rule where 80% focus is on retention and 20% new customer. But if I'm building a new brand from scratch, then maybe the focus is largely on the acquiring new consumer. So then maybe it's a 20-80 on a flip side. Maybe 20% would be on retaining whatever smaller consumers I have and largely focusing on the or maybe acquiring the newer consumer. But retention clearly helps, or that's the game of.
Yeah, you really can't give up that, right? Uh, we have a little more time. One last question, if I can take that up. If we have to look at customer retention and if we have to look at re-optimizing every time the CAC, how does the data technology space work for you guys in different sets of business, right? Are you from a different ecosystem of agency to FMCG to another business? Maybe I can start with Kushal's view on that.
I'm going to just try and talk because I think we're a tech sort of a company which works on real time data, gives that back to media publishers, gives that back to sort of marketers like both these people as well. And I think what powers us all the time is the fact that it's real time and it's getting the full funnel attribution right from what we just spoke about earlier as well. And finally, someone buying oil or butter is very happy to know that this person gave it as well. But I'm going to try and just flip it up for us and the audience as well, that while CAC is this big buzzword in terms of literally grown from a digital optimization, kind of ROI, whatever you want to call it, will we make another new word called VCAC? Venture Capital Acquisition Cost. Because all these digital first so-called brands are driving what finally the Sequoia is putting money into, or what someone else is putting money into, right? So the CMO is actually playing almost every day to the tune, right? So I'm hoping that maybe in the next session that Jaswant does 1 year from now, we'll have what is VCAC, or perhaps can we create something called BAC? The good old days, we would just say brand acquisition cost. Have we forgotten that completely? I mean, what do we spend money to build a brand? Or is it all about saying, oh God, today my CTR dropped. Today this didn't happen. Top funnel, middle funnel, lower middle funnel. Which funnel? So I thought just some food for thought in terms of which funnel the marketers spend most of their time on. Not to sort of say that they spend as much time on some funnel as well, but more often than not, it's the vulture on the top we're trying to sort of solve for.
Kushal just pointed out something and my team is looking at me straight. So that's the basic question which I think that's the basic bit which we as a brand, or I would say all other D2C brands are doing. So they are focusing more on these jargons wherein every day, or I would say every year, we are fighting upon what's the CTR or what's the CPC, how they are fluctuating. But Preeti, to answer to your question very specifically, data and technology, yes, these are the two important aspects which we have while we are building the entire CAC or LTV story. I think marketing automation is something which actually helps in driving the entire bit, how you are acquiring a customer and how you are servicing that customer at the end of the day. I think on top of it, what we guys have also done as a brand, we have layered it up with a more, you can say more, another way to basically reach out to our customer is the call center bit. So as a brand, we have created a call center which is roughly a workforce of 200 people, wherein the objective at the end of the day is to try to understand more from a customer, how and what was the feel of the product, and later on try to probably reach out to them again and again when the product is near to end. So that's something which we are trying to build. So we have layered the marketing automation. On top of it, we have a call center bit. So we are trying to correlate and bring a more better feasible solution for the brand and for the consumer. So that's what we are doing.
Yeah, so in terms of automation and data analysis, I think firmly, I mean, as a professional and as also as an organization, we believe in the capturing the data and trying to make the best use of it, even if we are a traditional FMCG company. But as I said, that while the one part of the marketing strategy could be optimized for data, but we also believe that the consumer is not just a number; he's also a living human being, and his priorities can change with time. And we've seen that what COVID has done to us. Maybe the thought process of the consumer has completely evolved. Those consumer insights have evolved. So maybe what worked for that particular consumer acquisition cost, maybe pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, would have been, even if I'm doing the same strategy, following the same trends, it might have been completely different. Because then there I have to add an additional intervention of understanding him as a person, as a living being, and try to understand his the psyche, that why he buy what he buys. So hence, data, digital automation, everything is very important, can add the maybe the last bit of efficiency, but on a topper funnel is the consumer insights that drive our business.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm also inspired by Dr. Sangvi to coin a term. So what fundamentally we believe is not a CAB, but I will say CAB, which is a customer acquisition belief. Why does he believe in your product is most important. So today, whatever campaign I try to do or whatever advertising intervention I try to do, I'm trying to reinforce that belief that you're using a right product. So for example, if he has bought my edible oil, and it's a very low engaging category, right? Unlike my smartphone, which I'm very conscious what smartphone I buy, oil, people hardly care about what oil they are using. But I have to keep reinforcing that the belief that the oil you're using is the right oil. And that is my retention strategy.
Correct.
I need to keep that belief alive. And that's what I keep optimizing for.
You know what, for me, it's an interesting reflection because I came to this discussion, which is a very CAC number. You know, it's all the brains working, you know, digits and codes and stuff like that. But I'm also hearing all say that there's an emotion to it. There's a heart to it, without which CAC won't be efficient or we'll not be able to optimize. There's a creative, there's a consumer, there's a communication. There's an impact of these combined factors also which drive CAC, not just from a short-term perspective, but I also hear you say the brand and the long-term impact on the CAC as well, right? Which is very interesting, and thank you, because that's a different perspective for what I entered in. And thank you for allowing me to ask those tough questions, which is beyond what we discussed, actually. I'm opening up the floor for any questions if you guys have. We have another 2 minutes. I think everybody's convinced on CAC, and they optimize very well. And I think your team, my team, all our teams are here, and I think they're very confident of giving better efficient CAC by tomorrow or by end of night.
Or they're just hungry.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open for questions and answers now. In case you have any questions, simply put up your hand and we'll give you a mic. Well, as we are closer to the lunchtime, I don't think anyone...
No, I don't think so. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much.
Being there. Thanks to the audience for being there, not running away for lunch. Thank you, guys.